Today we're going to look at how you can combine AI art elements in Photoshop to create digital art. This is a lot of fun and a great way to sort of learn and start learning digital art in Photoshop by playing with elements that have already been created before you start stepping up and creating more difficult images. So I have this Shaolin monk picture that I made in Midjourney, and I'm going to save it, but I want to actually create some artwork with it. So I'm actually going to save this image. And now I'm going to start exploring a few different things to actually make this image more interesting. I'm going to change the background to maybe some kind of temple. So I'm going to head to Discord and I'm going to start playing with some prompts. So I've got here Shaolin Temple in Ruins, Violent Storm and Fires to try and create a cool background I can work with for this image. Now that's not too bad, but still not quite what I was after. So I'm actually just going to keep on playing and making adjustments until I find a cool image that I really like. So I'm going to upscale this third image here, and we're going to play with that, but also I want to add a fireball on the guy's hand. So I've got some cool images here, I've got some flames, and I've also got a bit of a fireball here. So I'm going to upscale number 3 and number 3 again, and we kind of now will have the elements that we need once these are upscaled to start putting all the pieces together. The next thing I'm going to do is upscale these images using the Topaz Upscaler. This is obviously optional, but I wanted to sort of quickly include it. So now I have these images in Photoshop. They've been upscaled, so they're looking pretty good and pretty huge. And I'm going to start compositing and putting them together. First thing I want to do is I'm going to start with the background, and we're going to pop our guy right on here. So I'm actually going to go into main person here. I'm going to hit Control A or select all. I'm going to hit copy, and then I'm going to find our background, and I'm going to go edit and paste or Control V. You can also simply go to place embedded if you want to do that as well. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm hitting tab to turn this on or off. If you don't have your layers palette turned on, hit window and layers to turn it on, and I'm going to right click and convert this object to convert to smart object. That means I can scale it up and down, and it will still keep all the original information, and I won't lose any resolution if I decide to bring him back up after making him quite small. So because this has a simple layout, I'm confident I could probably use select subject. So I'm going to go to select and subject to select our main guy. If you don't know how to cut people out in Photoshop, like if you don't get this good result here, I will pop a link in the description below showing you how you can actually select, how you can cut people out by hand using the pen tool. That will be in the description below. I have touched on it briefly in another video, so always pretty handy. And there's a few things wrong here, but I think we can hide some of that and maybe even fix some of this other stuff. So the problem with that is now if I go down the bottom here, I have that selected, I have this layer turned on, I hit this square with a circle in it to mask that layer, and now we can sort of see there's a few problems with it. So I'm going to select the mask. You can see the white and the black area over here, grab my brush, and as long as I have white on the left, whatever I paint will reappear. So I'm going to make sure I've got my flow set to 100. I'm going to actually make this a bit bigger, bring the hardness up but not all the way up, and just adjust and paint some of these areas back in. Now one thing I will also mention is the hand has some funny stuff going on here. It's got like an extra thumb. So I'm going to switch this over so black is on the left, and if you don't have those, just click this first and then switch, and I'm going to remove by painting black. Make sure I have that mask highlighted and removing that thumb. Now you can probably try to correct this and add a thumbnail in there. Midjourney and AI is not too good at hands. I have another video showing you basically how you can fix hands, but what I recommend you do is either just try and re-roll or regenerate with better hands, or you can try and go to a place like Pexels. So we can actually have a look at that quickly. If I go to pexels.com, I type in fist, I can steal a few elements from here to fix up the fist. So if I choose this one here, I can download this image at a high resolution, and it is commercial free for you to use. I drag the fist image into my artwork, hit enter, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to grab just my polygon lasso tool up here, And I very roughly just try to select the thumb. Doesn't have to be perfect. The lighting on this is actually fairly similar, which is lucky, because if the lighting is vastly different, it's not going to work out. But I'm just going to hit copy, turn this layer off, and then I'm going to paste, so Control V or hitting edit and paste. And I can use free transform to just hold down shift, flip that around. I can rotate and kind of just try to place this thumb in here, hit enter, zoom in, and I just make some adjustments. Now, like I said, the lighting is pretty bad, so because I have this selected, I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves, or Control M, and just adjust that light down a fair bit. And then I can actually just grab the eraser and soften up this edge. So we kind of have that thumb looking a little bit more human. The feet are a little bit mangled, but we're going to pop that sort of behind the rocks to sort of hide that. But there's only so much we can really do. But I'm going to basically hold down shift, and I'm going to group these layers and then convert that into a smart object again. And now I have that image as a smart object cut out correctly, ready to go. So now I'm going to hit Control T or edit and free transform here. And I'm going to resize this guy and place him roughly where I want him to be. So it's starting to take shape a little bit. Some of the lighting doesn't match, but we are going to look at that later. What I'm going to do now is I want to actually hide him behind some of these rocks. So I'm just going to, in my layers palette, bring that fill down so he's a bit semi-transparent. And I'm going to hit my magnifying glass and just kind of zoom in to see what we've got here. So we've got a rock here and a rock there. So once again, I'm just going to grab my polygon lasso tool because it doesn't need to be perfect. And I'm going to select the rock, making sure that it encompasses the foot. I hold down shift and you see a little plus symbol, and I'm going to add a little bit more to that selection, make sure it's over the foot. And now I have the two rocks selected. I go to select inverse, and it has inverted that selection and selected everything but those two rocks. So now when I hop on that group here, I can click the masking symbol here, crank that fill back up, and the guy is now behind those rocks. And one thing that's also very handy, if I turn off this link symbol here, I can now click him and move him a little bit if I want to, and the mask stays in place. So if I want to make that adjustment to about there, I can now do that, which is pretty cool. So the next step is I want to start, first of all, I'm going to correct this background a little bit, but we are going to do a bit more with it later. I'm going to highlight the background here. I'm actually going to right click, convert that to a smart object also. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. Now you might find simply hitting Auto does the trick, but in this case it doesn't. It's actually lightened it more than I expected. So I want to bring out the blacks because he's got really dark shadows, but the shadows here are really quite light. So I'm going to bring the dark areas down and quite lift up the center. So by adjusting the left up and down, I'm adjusting the dark areas of the image. As you can see, it getting darker. Or I can lift the midtones or bring them back and try to find a nice sort of middle ground where things all look a bit more natural. And now things are looking just a bit better. Not perfect, but a bit better. The next step is I'm going to start overlaying all the elements, and then we're going to start playing with them a bit more. So I've got this fireball here. I'm actually going to hit Control A and Control C, so select all and copy and go back. I'm going to paste it in place, and I'm going to move it on the layers panel above our Shaolin monk, and I'm going to just hit Control T for free transform and move it in place. So I'm going to make it about the size of his fist down here. Try and get that angle. I've actually moved this, it's rotating a bit funny. That's okay. We're going to get the flames shooting up, hit OK. Now when I zoom in here, I'm going to put this onto screen. And you'll notice that it's actually, you can see the edge of the image. Because once again, we need to adjust the light. The black is not 100% black. And what screen does is anything lighter than black gets added to the image, but black is transparent. So anywhere in between black and white is semi-transparent. So I'm going to go again, I'm going to hit Control, actually, when I'm recording videos, I do get a few errors of Photoshop. So I'm going to get Image, Adjustment, Curves, and I'm going to adjust this black in until that edge disappears. And now I can move it into position. I don't necessarily want it to be fully transparent in the middle there, so I can click on my man, add a new layer in between, and then I'll just get my brush and grab a black. Kind of add that in there, and then I can adjust it down to suit. So now we have a guy who has like a bit of a flaming hand, kind of like a comic book. The flames are a little bit shallow, so I've got this other image. Once again, Control A, Control C, Control V to paste. And I'm going to just resize that down to about here. Maybe I'll spin it the other way. So using free transform just to kind of get this in position. I once again adjust the image with curves. So I go to Image, Adjustments, Curves, bring the darkness in so we get a nice dark background. I put it on screen. And now we have this cool effect of the flames coming off the fireball. So these are all the elements, but there's still a lot that needs to be done. There's a lot of lighting that is wrong. There's a lot missing. It doesn't look very natural. So I'm going to actually zoom in. One of the first things is that the guy is got a lot of heavy shadows when there's all this light around it. So I'm actually going to, I've got the guy here on my layers panel. I'm going to create a new layer, and then I'm going to hold down Alt just between the two of them, and you'll see this little box with a square. I'm going to clip that layer to this. So what that does is, if I get my brush and grab, say, a green, if I start painting, it doesn't show up until that is above the layer it's clipped to. So it actually confines that to the guy, if that makes sense. What I'm actually going to do is, I'm going to get a brush. I'm going to go for some blue, really light blue, around where this area is, zoom in, bring my brush hardness down and the size down, and I'm going to actually make this layer color dodge and slowly add in some light around the edge, and even add a little bit in here. It doesn't have to be perfect to start with, just around to there, and then I can get my eraser tool, make some adjustments, and get a smoother sort of transition of light around the different areas of his head. So he's got a bit of blue around there. I can also take the opacity right down and look at the contours of his face and add a little bit in there if I want to. Might not necessarily look that way legitimately, but we just play with that a little bit, touch it up. So now we have a bit of a glow around his head, which is blue. This area here is a bit green. I think it looks a bit funny, but I'm sort of happy with it for now. And now we need to do the same around the outside. We're going to use more of a light yellow orangey color. Now we can keep staying on this one layer. I'm just going to call it blue highlight. It's not spelled correctly, but you get the idea. But I can add another layer and clip again, and it'll actually clip to the bottom still. So now I can get my paintbrush, bring it up a bit, and start getting some yellow on there. I do want to make it color dodge again, and I'm going to just bring that lightness up. And just got to look at the image and roughly see where the light would appear. So I'm going to do that very quickly. Now that looks a bit crazy. So once again, I get my eraser. This time I'm going to bump it up a bit and slowly adjust. So now we have these highlights here, and it's starting to look a bit better. It still doesn't look great, but it looks better. The next thing we want to look at is actually this fireball here would also be producing some light. So I'm going to create yet another layer, clip it, hold down again, and I'm going to get kind of that really warm, I'll get that real yellow color again, and continue to paint some more, this time from the front. So I'm going to actually, once again, make that a color dodge layer. And I'm just going to kind of paint up very roughly and try and find the contours of the face that would be lit by this. So this pretty much this whole side and front. And I generally start off pretty rough, and then I'll once again get the eraser, especially around the face, because that's probably where it's going to be most noticeable. Okay, it's a bit rough, but you get the idea. So a few other things now is this is looking really yellow when there's a lot of light and white there. So I'm just going to make some further adjustments. Again, always review and adjust and continue to add in any light you think needs to go in. Now, another thing I want to do, I can see this yellow looks a bit sort of washed out compared to what we've used. So I'm going to find these flames and I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. Bring that saturation up. Do the same on the fireball. Saturation up. And the other thing I want to do is kind of create a bit of a glow. And there's going to be a bit of a glow down here where the white is shining through and behind it. So I'm actually going to create a new layer. And I'm going to get some white. And I'm going to make this nice and big. And just sort of pop it on there. Give it a glow. And maybe I'll give it a linear dodge or a color dodge, depending on what looks best. Bring that fill down and just play with that a little bit. And then I'm actually going to adjust some of the light down here. So I'm going to add another layer again. So I just keep adding layers upon layers. And we're just going to add in some, sort of like some areas where the light is bleeding through. Down the bottom here, the side again. So anywhere sort of behind him, but we want to keep it very faint around him, just so that way it's kind of coming in and overlapping a little bit, and you can see things are starting to look a little bit better. Not perfect, but you sort of get the idea. But for now, for what we're doing, I think that's actually pretty good. The colors are a bit bogus. This is a little bit too crazy again. So again, if I just find anything that looks a bit too crazy, I can actually also bring the opacity down. Bring the opacity down or the fill down a bit to get a better effect. And make any adjustments that you think need to be made just to polish it up. And I think that's actually looking pretty good. But what do I do now if I want to try and get, because we've got all these different elements, different sort of color levels and things to them. They're sort of pretty decent. Even if I zoom in, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look too bad. But I actually want to add in over the top of the whole layer something to sort of bring it all together. So I'm going to go down the bottom here to this little circle. Add in a color lookup. And I can actually go in and try some different sort of profiles. Until I find something that I think looks cool. And one thing I think is awesome is actually, this actually looks pretty good apart from the fact that it's a bit overcooked. But because it's a layer, I can get my fill and bring it down a bit. And I can then go ahead and add another color lookup if I want to. So I'm going to add in, but maybe we go for the warm color. I bring this down and I just tone it back and kind of give it a nice overall. So now the image is looking a little bit more consistent in its composition. Now there is one thing I've noticed again. This guy is not projecting a shadow. So once again, we're looking at light and how light interacts in the space. Even though I've added all this stuff on the top, I can still go back in, come down to where my main guy is here, and I'm going to just, beneath him here, add a new layer. And all I'm going to do is grab black and a paintbrush. And since the light is coming from behind him, it would sort of be coming in this general direction. I'll put the opacity up. And it looks painted on. But what I can do still, I just make some adjustments. I'm going to go Hue Saturation or Control U, and maybe I'll just bring that lightness up a bit, colorize it so it matches. And then I can layer blend that maybe with Color Burn. So playing around with different blending modes can be handy. The Color Burn adds a bit too much color, so let's go Linear Burn. Once again, get our eraser out to try and smooth things a bit. And now we have our image. So that's how you can kind of combine some images in Photoshop. Now, if I had a lot more time, I could probably make a lot more tweaks, but for the sake of this video, this is a great way to start. I do recommend experimenting a lot with layer blends, different technologies. Definitely check out some Photoshop videos, because whatever art you're making is still going to be unique to you. Now, there is an issue with his foot sticking through here. I will quickly fix that, but that's just a matter of clicking this mask, painting a bit of black over here. But you kind of get the idea. So this is the image. It's been upscaled, it's been worked on, and I'm going to save it. It's currently 9,000 pixels. So I'm pretty happy with that. One more thing I'm going to add though is that instead of actually working on the image, you can add some basic overlays and things in like that. So if I have a texture I want to add in, I can add in this dust and scratches texture that I like to use a fair bit and give it a bit of a printed look. Dial that down a bit. So you can create nice effects with this kind of stuff. I can also mask that, and if I don't want it to be over the guy's face, I can kind of take certain bits away and still have that nice scratched effect if I wanted to add something like that in there to give it a bit of a printed look. But you know, it's pretty much up to you. Your creativity is what you can do, especially when it comes to AI art and Photoshop. Combining the two, you can get some pretty nifty results. I'm gonna pop a link to this image below so you can check that out if you want to. Otherwise, thanks for watching the video. I hope you found it useful, and if you want more videos like this, leave a comment, especially Photoshop. If you want anything to do with Photoshop, let me know, and we'll see what we can come up with from there. Otherwise, have a great day, and I hope to see you again soon. See you later.